Hey everyone, my name's Andy. I'm from the Finding Value Finance channel. Today I've got Andrew with us. He's actually an ex-coworker that I used to work with. And we also used to go to the same gym. And we would go to the gym and we would have these long discussions. I am pro precious metals. He was pro Bitcoin. And he did copious amounts of research into Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these different cryptocurrencies, Monero, and on and on and on and on. And we would basically debate back and forth the merits of both of these, either crypto coins or precious metals, the positives, the negatives. And what I want to do is I wanted to bring him on. I think he knows a lot about crypto. I think he probably thinks he knows a lot, and I agree with that. So I want to challenge the basic thoughts. We're both kind of from an engineering background. He's an engineer, I'm an engineer. We kind of dig into the utility of things. It's not at the face, we're not going to argue at the face type stuff. So what I mean by that is, I don't care if a rich person owns crypto. That's not a reason to buy something. I don't care about the mainstream ideas of why something might be good. One of the mainstream things about crypto is it's limited. So they say, therefore, since it's limited, it is therefore valuable. It's a false statement. It doesn't work in philosophy, it doesn't work in math. It just doesn't work. Hot Wheels are just as limited as crypto. So you've got things that are limited, but that doesn't mean that the price has to go higher. So we're gonna dive into some of the perhaps downfalls in crypto, and we don't have the answer per se. We're just going to bring up potential problems or potential things that you want to look out for if you're looking at these. And I know the channel's not necessarily like a crypto-based channel, but I think it's something to talk about and something to get out there, because I don't hear too many arguments that are similar to what we're going to bring up today. Mm-hmm. And maybe some of these guys that are hardcore, you brought it up, technocrats or something, or hardcore crypto guys, maybe they know a little bit about it, but we'll dive into it. But the first thing I want to start with is you first have to understand how commodities work at a basic level. And I'm just going to go through a basic level of how commodities kind of price themselves. So what happens is you've got cost curves. That's kind of the bottom cost. And you've got different tiers of cost. You've got the high cost producers, and then the tiers go down all the way to the low cost. And you get this cost curve where the price fluctuates between a top of demand, basically the psychological threshold of where demand gets priced out, and then it goes all the way back down below the high cost producers where supply gets cut back. And it's a function, the price is a function between supply and demand. If demand exceeds supply, you hit the psychological threshold at some point where demand equals supply through price. Prices fall all the way down to below the high cost, middle cost producers to cut back that supply. And that's really the cycle that it goes through. And you get these investment cycles where investment comes in, you expand the productive capacity, and then it'll cycle back up where the price moves up, you expand it, and then when you get a downturn, it contracts it, that supply, as it comes below the high cost producers. And in crypto, I don't think it's necessarily exactly the same, because there's some nuances there. And that's what I really wanted to talk about with Andrew, is bring him on and say, what happens? We go through a big boom in crypto, which we've gone through. It's gone up and up and up for the price per coin. But when it comes back down and goes below the cost of the miners, what happens when that happens? And I think there's a couple of things that you may want to describe about the background of crypto before we maybe dive into that. How does the network work for, say, like Bitcoin? And I don't know if they all work the same, but how does the network work? What is it dependent on? Is it dependent on these miners? How do they get paid? Like how does that work?
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Andy, for having me on. And just a quick note, like you said, while we were always debating at the gym, I have completely sold my position. It was about 2 years ago, and completely flipped I just don't see the future. I see it as a way to try to invest money really quickly and then sell really quickly and take advantage of things and then get out. And so to answer your question though, I have to stay with Bitcoin, right? The precedence I have to set right now is that yes, I recognize there's 1,000 projects, but right now I'm on Coin Market Cap right now, and 40% of the dominance is Bitcoin. Okay, so it is only fair that we discuss Bitcoin. Otherwise, if it was Ethereum, which uses proof of stake, which is different than proof of work is what we're going to discuss. Well, if the future investment was in proof of stake, then Ethereum would be the dominant coin on the market, but it's not. So let's stick with the dominant coin on the market and use that as a data point, because all the people in your comment sections, people on Kitco or any other places I hear Bitcoin being talked, it's always Bitcoin. It's not the other cryptos. Is that kind of a fair precedence to make right now? Okay. So Bitcoin started, like 2009, 2010 or 11. I didn't really hear about it till 2012, 13. And it's because at that time I used to listen to a huge libertarian podcast. And libertarians and anarcho-capitalists loved Bitcoin at the time. Why? Because they saw it as they love gold, but they were like, how do I transact gold with someone that lives in Japan? If I'm trying to buy something from them, I want to be completely off the system. I want to be John Galt and Ayn Rand and all that kind of stuff. So when Bitcoin was invented and it was taken off within that community, they saw it as the way for me to trade globally without being taxed, without any governments being involved, without anyone being involved other than me and the person I'm trying to transact with. So that's when it was getting popular, and that's when I first started hearing about it. But I was a poor college student, so I couldn't invest, and it was like $10 at that time, which just, sucks to be me at that time. But I could have made a lot, but didn't. But anyways, still kept up with it, and it wasn't really till I graduated college and started working where I was like, hey, I got money to risk, so let's put some stuff in here. And so I was doing that, and so Bitcoin, how does it work? You need to have the decentralized nature, which is why people like it and why the libertarians originally liked it, is based off of everyone who is mining, aka a participant, aka a node. You'll hear that a lot. All these decentralized nodes, for anyone running it off a computer or a server or a CPU, or your GPU or your CPU can run the blockchain. Every single one of those participants are contributing individually towards that giant network. So you have thousands of hundreds of thousands of millions of participants all creating a painting, if you will. Everyone's got one tiny paintbrush and they're all putting one pixel on a giant painting and creating the painting together. That's how that works. And it's important to know that, because the question that people don't really ask is, what happens if there are no participants? And I think that's where you're leading. And why that's important is because 12 years ago, if you were running your miner, you could make a Bitcoin a week. Why? Because there's a limited supply. It's 21 million. There's 21 million Bitcoin out there. No, not out there. There's 21 million Bitcoin cap.
Possible. Yeah.
Yes, there's 19. If I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it right now. It's 19.2 have been mined. So there's 2 million left. There's about 10% left. You get diminishing returns.
You said, 19.2 minus 21 point. Okay, gotcha.
Yep. Yeah, so you get about 10% left. Yep. You get diminishing returns. Okay. I was mining crypto in 2017, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I really like Monero. I wasn't profiting very well. It was too expensive for me, and for anyone that lives in a standard household who doesn't operate a server farm, it's too expensive for you. In 2010, 2011, 12, that wasn't the case. Anyone can run their miner and profit, or at least just like pump out Bitcoin. You're getting like a Bitcoin a day or a Bitcoin a week or something like that. But at the time, it only cost $1. You could sell it for $1. So it didn't seem profitable. Today it is, if you held on for 10 years. But now the question, right, that we were talking about earlier is, so that's the decentralized nature of Bitcoin. But because of how expensive everything is getting, because of how expensive gas is getting, it's starting to centralize. It's almost
around cheap energy, right?
Around cheap energy, which I read was Kazakhstan. Apparently 20% of all the miners are in Kazakhstan. I think like one guy owns it. And so we went from this decentralized libertarian utopia to those same people who wanted to make a profit, who probably followed those same philosophy, were like, well, let me centralize everything into one spot to make the most money. So now Bitcoin is like becoming more and more centralized every single day because people like me are getting priced out from mining. And the only people that can mine are the people that have the cheap GPUs, cheap land, and the cheap energy sources. Kind of funny how that worked out, huh?
Yeah, I think it's the thing that I get confused on, because the way that it works is when you go below the high cost producers, and I'm going back to kind of to where my question is, supply cuts back and the commodity that's used in products is needed in society. So you're literally pulling this. But what if everything flips and the market conditions are not ripe for Bitcoin? Let's say we have an increasing interest rate environment, higher energy costs, all these things add up. Now, here's another question I have. I'm going to kind of step back before I dive into that question. As time goes on, isn't it a lot more difficult to mine these coins? It takes a lot more processing power to mine each coin as time progresses. Is that a true statement?
That's true because of the diminishing returns on the circulating supply, right? So if we're at 19.2 million, the last 10%, theoretically, you know what? If I remember the original paper correctly, theoretically, you will never mine all 21 million because it's going to be on not a log scale, asymptote, right? Trying to remember calculating.
Asymptotically approaches a certain number.
Yeah, and it will never hit it.
There.
It will never get there. Yeah. So as you imagine, you will exponentially get slower, or exponentially get worse returns.
Which means it'll exponentially get more costly to mine the coins.
Yeah. Yep.
So when we look at this, as we approach 21 million and as we asymptotically approach, so what asymptotically approach means is 21 million is your line going across. You'll never actually hit 21 million. You're going to get closer and closer to 21 million, but never actually hit it. As the computing power ramps up exponentially, that computing power, as it ramps to hit 21 million, will exponentially be, we'll say the cost to mine something will approach infinity. Does that make sense? If it asymptotically approaches some level. As that occurs, as the price goes lower, for whatever reason, you get into the market conditions, increasing interest rates, higher inflation, and liquidity pulls back, your cost of Bitcoin, or the price of Bitcoin, I should say, goes down below the cost of the miners as the mining cost goes up exponentially. What happens when the cost of Bitcoin and we'll call it the speculative nature of people, the speculation interest declines in Bitcoin? And as it declines and as your supply of mining declines, you don't actually get a contraction of supply to equal the supply and demand. That supply is fixed. So if everyone runs out and the miners are at their cost curves are doing this at the same time the price goes below it, what happens to the nodes? Do they just all cease to exist? Like, what happens there? And if it goes below the cost, do they just transfer all of the cost to the transactions being performed?
Yes. In summary, yes. So let's just throw out a number to make it easy on everyone, right? I think I read 17,000 was the floor right now, the average floor for Bitcoin. So it cost a miner $17,000 in energy resources to mine one Bitcoin.
I've read anywhere between 17,000 and 38,000.
Oh, that would be terrible.
So that might be the high cost producers and the low cost producers. Yeah. So it's gonna cut back. But that doesn't mean that it increases the demand for Bitcoin.
No. See, it's opposite of precious metals, isn't it?
It's
or not precious metals, but commodities.
Just commodities in general. What happens is there's an innate demand for products. So you got to pull no matter what. If the price is expensive, they pull. If the price is cheap, they pull. Some sort of demand for industrial products. Bitcoin inherently has no value to it from an industrial perspective, from really from a payment perspective, from any sort of perspective. There is no inherent demand. Where you have to pull it. So if people get scared because the speculative nature and money flows out, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got the steady money that just automatically has to come into Bitcoin.
So I can answer your question with a real example that happened to me.
Okay.
It was in 2020. So like I said, Ethereum is on proof of stake. They've recently switched over. How that's working, how effective it is, I don't know yet, right? I would need to do more research into that. But it used to be proof of work. And what I found when I was trying to sell all my stuff in 2020, I had, let's just throw out a number. Maybe I had 10 grand in Ethereum. Maybe it was 20 grand in Ethereum. I wanted to send it from my wallet to Coinbase so I can sell. And there was such a slowdown on the network that they wanted to charge me something like $250 to make that transaction. And that's an example of what happens when all of the fees are going to the transactions as opposed to the fees going to being able to mine something in circulation. And so, but you can play with it, right? So what I ended up doing was they had at that time, you could say, hey, I'm not a priority transaction. So it took 7 days and maybe I paid $30. So it took 7 days to do that transaction and I paid $30 for it. But if you wanted to buy a cup of coffee, you can't do that, right? You can't. It's a cup of coffee. And that's what some people are saying crypto is going to be. It's going to, you swipe a card and you make a transaction. Can't do it like that. And so for Bitcoin, right, if once you almost run out, and I think I've told you this before, I was researching this same problem and I found a GitHub blog from 2011. Someone was asking this exact same question. They said, when we mine almost all the Bitcoin, what is the incentive for me to continue mining? And then the people that answered it said, we don't know how to fix this yet, but as of right now, all the fees would have to go to transactions. And so if you were making a transaction, we would have to cut off a slice of the transaction payment and give it to the miners, give it to the nodes so they can continue to sustain the network.
So here's a question though, as we asymptotically approach 21 million, but never get there, which means it takes an infinite amount of computing power to actually progress that and to basically still have this network. That doesn't make any sense because then you would be transferring an infinite amount of money to the transactions. You would basically just implode.
So it would get infinitely, you would eventually probably hit a fixed percentage value of each transaction and it's going to be significant, right? Because it's not a percentage of the transaction. Actually, I take that back. That was one of the problems. It's never a percentage of the transaction. It's a fixed rate. At that time, it's a fixed rate. So it was something like that each transaction is now going to be $15, regardless if you're moving 100 grand or if you're moving $1. You need to pay $15 worth. I say $15, right? It's measured in the crypto. It's measured in Bitcoin. But at the time, as it relates to US dollars, it was like, in order to make this transaction, you have to pay $15 to move $2 or $15 to move $200,000. And that eliminates 99% of the use case that everyone claims cryptocurrencies have, which is fast, anonymous transactions. But if you're paying $15 for every single one of those, you just killed your utility. Utility.
So what makes sense, I mean, what doesn't make sense then is why would someone use Bitcoin, period? In a long-term case. Why would, so here's my opinion. I'll just throw my opinion out. The only reason people buy Bitcoin is because they believe the price will go up, period. There's no utility in it, and the utility, because of the problems inherent in the design of Bitcoin and the mining and the nodes that are created for this network, makes it infinitely expensive, which then basically cuts all the utility out of it. So why would someone buy this if they know that?
So this is where, I imagine the comment section is going to fill in with this, right? Where people will say, that's true about Bitcoin. That's not true about this coin. And I'm going to be like, okay, so what's true about this coin? Because believe me, in 2016 to 2018, I read every single white paper and I was trying to find the next Bitcoin. I read them all. I didn't read them all, but I read many, many use case, blockchain, cryptos, whatever it was. And everyone always writes a white paper to explain how, this is the faults of crypto, but we're going to solve everything with this technology. And that's, you mentioned it earlier, but that's not what I call, but it's what people call technocrats. Those are the Elon Musks, the Mark Zuckerbergs, it's the Jack Dorseys, where they think given enough years and given enough human intuition, we can solve every problem. I don't think that's true. That's just fundamentally not true, right? We'll never solve many, many things, traveling through time or maybe like death, right? People will always die, those kinds of things. We can't fix everything. There are limitations. But so I want to address that because the comment section, not your comment section, not that I care too much, right? But the counter argument I hear all the time is, well, in 5 to 10 years, they're going to fix that. And I ask, how? And they go, well, there's some theories floating around. And I'm like, but that's not actionable. Why invest in that? Why would you invest in that, something that's not grounded in proof? It doesn't make any sense. So that's the, to answer your question, it's that people will continue to invest because they believe that these crypto technocrats will be like, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. And then they'll be like, they'll kind of sprinkle some flavor into things, and they'll say, well, we're working on proof of stake, and we're going to release that, and it's going to fix everything. I promise, it's going to fix everything. And so people will continue to invest because you have people like, you have really smart people who are smarter than any of us who created, these algorithms and these cryptocurrencies, and now they're saying, hey, don't worry, we'll fix it. Believe me, we'll fix it. And so people will continue to invest basically on hope that things will get fixed when I don't see it happening.
And the whole support and basis of a lot of these cryptos is literally an increasing amount of money coming into these cryptos and blowing up that price to keep the miners afloat. That I struggle with, because how are you going to continually attract people into this? Like, it's literally, it is a Ponzi scheme is really what it is, because you have to get that money in there for the miners and the nodes to exist. Otherwise, if it all comes apart and falls apart and goes down to $500 or $20 a coin, it's done. The miners can't exist. They can't survive, right?
No, they can't survive at all. And you want to know, in 2020, one big data point I read that helped me make my decision to just exit was there were less transactions in 2020 than there were in 2017. So if the world is adopting cryptocurrencies, how are there less transactions in 2020 than 2017? The only reason that would happen is because everyone's buying and holding. And why are they buying and holding? Because they want to sell it in the future for profit, not because there's any utility involved. If you buy and hold, it's because you want to sell it in the future. That's it. And so that kind of answers your question there. That shows some proof that it's people buy it because they want to make money off of it, not because they genuinely think that, here's an example that I fell for in 2017, right? That shipping contracts would all use blockchain. So all the global shipping lines all over the world, all that complex stuff, they were going to use blockchains to identify every single container on board of a ship and use blockchain technology to ensure when that gets delivered via a contract, the accepting party will then pay you out in their cryptocurrencies because the contract is written in the blockchain. It can't be manipulated. They can put the shipping container ID numbers into the contract and all that kind of stuff. I was reading this white paper. I'm like, oh my gosh, this would change the world. And I invested. That thing went to zero. Someone found some error in the code, or like the people that invented it, they sold everything. They were holding some crypto. They were holding the bag. And when it reached a high, they sold everything and crashed it to zero. And now I looked into it not too long ago. It's not even in the top like 400. And at that time, it was like a top 25 coin that people were really talking about. I fell for it, and I'm still seeing it today.
And here's another question though. So when I go and I buy a Porsche car, it comes off a production line. So what they do is they have inputs. They take these commodity inputs, they put it through their production, and out the end rolls a Porsche turbo or some Porsche car, right? I buy the car and I own the output of those processes and design. So what makes that car valuable to me is the design of the product and the use I get out of that product and the utility I get out of that product. That is what I own. I don't own the production. I don't own the inputs. I don't own the design. I don't own any of that stuff. Now, when I look at Bitcoin, what everyone always says is blockchain, blockchain, the technology, the technology. I'm like, yeah, it uses that technology. But when you own a Bitcoin, if you own one Bitcoin, you don't own the blockchain. You don't own that technology. It's not like you have an investment in that technology. It's not like I'm a part owner of Porsche when I buy a Porsche car. So when you own a piece of Bitcoin, when you own the coin, you don't own anything of the blockchain. True? Or do you just own an output from it, like you own the Porsche car?
That's kind of hard to say because the blockchain will. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting question. I haven't thought of that. The easy
Well,
answer, the easy way to answer it without thinking about it too hard is, yeah, you don't own the blockchain. Because if I fall off the blockchain as a node, the blockchain still exists. And then if you
right.
fall off, the blockchain continues to exist.
So what exactly do you own then?
The coin, and
But what
which
is
the coin basically represents the blockchain, right? Does that kind of make sense? It's you need to have you need to have the blockchain for the technology to work. And so you need to incentivize people to use the blockchain, and the output of the energy going into the blockchain is the coins. It's almost a derivative of energy. That's how I see it now. It really is just a derivative.
everything is.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah. Okay.
is a
Yeah.
derivative of
Yeah.
energy. Absolutely everything. But I mean, this is what I'm thinking. It's like, okay, so you've got blockchain that's working the technology in the background, which you could use for shipping. You could use it for all these different applications if you wanted to, but you don't actually own anything from, you own something that the blockchain created, but you own nothing of a stake in the technology. The technology can be amplified, used. It could be
Yeah. Yes.
non-decentralized. It could do whatever it wants. The blockchain argument is completely out of the question. It doesn't matter. It's just using a technology to make it either secure or decentralized.
And they're already doing that, right? I think IBM is
Are,
doing that. IBM
yes.
was doing that. They were like, "Oh, blockchain's kind of cool. It works, for our company. So we'll decentralize certain aspects of our technology within our own company." You can set up if you have 5 devices in your house and you want to set up a backup servers across the blockchain technology within your house, you can do that. It's almost like setting up a cloud. It's almost like setting up a cloud. And so there are companies leveraging that, but guess what? They're not producing a coin out of it because they're like, why? I mean, we're just doing this internally, locally.
So the value is creating the ledger and basically creating contracts to do certain things. But to own the piece of whatever it is, that's not the value. The utility isn't owning that thing, is it?
Well, it's hard to answer. If we stick with Bitcoin, then the easy answer is you're right. But when you start looking into Ethereum and smart contracts, it gets a lot more confusing because you need to have, in order for those smart contracts to work, the idea is you have to pay through our coins in order to utilize our smart contracts. So if I were to write a contract with you stating I'm going to pay you monthly, based off of you deliver one video a day, and every time you deliver a video a day, I will pay you 1 Ethereum, and that gets put into the Ethereum blockchain. That contract gets put into the blockchain, and we agree to it. We shake hands. My wallet's here, your wallet's here. They shake hands, and every time you do that output, you automatically put it into the blockchain. And then they take an Ethereum from me and give it to you, and it's all happening automatically based off of the contract, which is happening automatically and accurately. So there's no human involvement. There's no one that's going to make an error, assuming you set the baseline accurately.
So it's a rite of passage to use the blockchain or to use.
Yep.
So then it just falls back to what is the utility that this entity or thing or coin can bring to the user?
But Andy, I'm going to argue against myself here because it's all open source technology anyway. So why would I use Ethereum to do a contract when I can just go make it myself?
I don't know.
It's all everything. It's the blockchains have to be open source for you to download it and run the node. So at least that's how I've seen all of them. Maybe. But then if there's a blockchain that's not open source, why would you use it? They might have code in there that will take all your coins. So I'm a little. Did you know that's how Dogecoin started? By the way,
What
the meme coin Doge.
Yeah, I know
Dogecoin.
what Doge is, but how did it start? In
Well,
open source?
because someone took
Or-
Bitcoin and said, let me move the decimal point over by 100 and then make it an infinite supply that you can mine. And I'm going to take, instead of having a Bitcoin logo, I'm going to give it a Doge face. The guy created it in 2 hours because all he did was copy and paste the Bitcoin source code and move the zero over a few decimal places. And yet I still heard 2 years ago when I sold, I was hearing in the office some people talking about how they think Dogecoin is going to blow up and this kind of thing. I'm like, dude, do you not know? Don't you know the history? So yeah,
Yep.
you're right. It's a joke. Just rewrite. It's open source. Just go take the code and make your own. Why use someone else's?
So what value would using Bitcoin versus some other thing have then? Like, why would you use it?
If you rewind and ask me that 5 years ago, I would say it's just technocrat stuff. I don't know if I have a good argument anymore. I would have said, oh, people will adopt it. People want it to be decentralized. Why would Amazon want to do this on their own? Because something could happen to the Amazon servers. Wouldn't it be better if Amazon and IBM and Microsoft all use one single decentralized coin and no one can get screwed over? And the more I started thinking about that, the more I realized if I owned a company, why would I do that? I would want to own everything. Why would I leverage some third-party open source decentralized project? I want to centralize my stuff.
Yep.
So I had to think about it more. Now, look, it took a huge price movement to the downside for me to start seeing the light. But yeah, I started doing more research and then I was like, you know what? Next time there's an upside, I'll probably sell out. So that's what I did 2 years ago. But I think it's just I have a hard time finding a good answer to that these days. Anytime I ask people and some of my old friends from 2017, they continue to answer it the same way I was answering it back then. Just give it some time, wait for adoption. The technology will come out. It will solve all these issues. And next was NFTs, right? I had one friend saying NFTs are going to be valuable because you'll see counties start putting marriage licenses via NFTs. Where you won't get a hard paper, you'll just get a QR code that links to your NFT that has your marriage license. How convenient would that be? And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty convenient, but they're not going to do that. Why would the government do that? They want to own whatever technology they're using to produce things, right? Same thing would be true about, I heard other people saying mortgages. They're saying instead of using these title companies to do all these mortgages, they'll use NFTs and blockchain that will track mortgages and titles and deeds and all those kinds of things. So instead of having two family members debate over who's got the right and most up-to-date deed because there was some fire in your local county assessor and no one knows, you put it on the blockchain. And since it's decentralized, you just got to re-download the blockchain and you'll find out what's accurate. Okay, this is true. But again, the question is, where's the US government just going to be like, you know what, Ethereum is the one we're going to go with, or Pancake Swap is a coin. We're going to go with Pancake Swap to store all of our deeds for every property in the United States. That's not Polkadot or Polygon or whatever it is, Cardano. It's not going to happen. If anything, the government's just going to make their own, which I think China was talking about with their digital currency and all that. Why would the US government adopt a currently existing coin? A blockchain. They can just go make their own. If they want to do NFTs, they can do that on their own blockchain. There you go.
So basically, I can't come up with a value proposition for any of these coins at all. Because when I look at it from my simplistic view, and this is how we look at things of design. You've got inputs, you've got your process, and then you've got your output. The process is blockchain, the output is coins, and the input is copious amounts of components, computational power, and energy. The best thing we could do for humanity is to kill all of that, to save the commodities that go into the computers, the polysilicon, the chips, the computing power, the energy, the fossil fuels, the renewables, the commodities that go into all that stuff. The best thing to do is to divert all of that energy and computing power to stuff that is actually fixing problems. Is that a true statement or?
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. It's going to get expensive. It's going to get crazy expensive. What you said, 17 to 34K?
It was somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And it was going up. There's people saying it was like 50,000 at one point for certain mining. It
Right.
just kept going up and up and up, depending
So-
on who you were and where you were located.
So let's just play a mental exercise, right? Let's just say 20K, it's an easy number. Let's say all inputs are the same and stay the same. Because of diminishing returns, next year will be 25K. And then to get one coin, assuming everything's the same. You don't have to buy new rigs. You don't have to, energy prices stay the same. The year after that, because it's going to be harder, exponentially harder, it's going to be now 35. And then the year after that, it's going to be 50K. And then you're going to hit like 100K, right? To just get to one coin. And so now imagine if there's an energy crisis. And now imagine if these GPUs are eventually going to reach their end of life and you need to continue buying more from Taiwan, who is having a shortage, or they go to war with China. And now there's an even bigger chip shortage. And now these GPUs are of short supply and they're extremely expensive. And on top of that, in order to mine one coin, it's going to cost you 100 grand to do it. But now Bitcoin is still sitting at 20K. So what happens then? If I'm owning a mining rig, I'm going to be like, I got to turn this off. I'm turning off for now. I'll wait for Bitcoin to come back up to 100K so that when I start mining again, I'll get 100. I'll at least break even. Well, if that's what everyone does, your entire network just shut off because all the participants are gone. So now there's no blockchain. Because why? Because if you want to re-download and keep up, so like this is what I would do, Andy. If I went onto my wallet, I think I still have a Monero and a blockchain wallet. And if I loaded it up, the first thing it will say is, hey, you're out of date. You're not kept up with the blockchain. Let's catch you up. And it's going to be this long download line to download the blockchain and keep me up to date. It could take, like if I'm far enough behind, I mean, it could take hours. How much energy is that going to take? Now imagine if like my GPU is running full power and natural gas is $30 a unit or whatever it is, right? However it's measured. And I'm like, or you're in Germany. You think anyone's running crypto in Germany right now? No, they're all in Kazakhstan. What happens if the German prices hit the rest of the world? Everyone's going to shut off. It's gone.
And here's the weird thing. When this happens, the network shuts off. If this happens and you're in silver, which has intrinsic value, and you've got demand all over the place for things because it's the #2 commodity in the world, that is a bullish scenario for silver.
Yes.
This is completely bearish for Bitcoin as the price goes up, the mining costs, and as it comes to the end of its life. It's bearish for Bitcoin holders, not bullish. Is that a fair statement?
Oh yeah. It's weird. Like I almost want to fast forward 10 years just to see if we're right. It's interesting, right? It's just, I've never heard anyone talk about this. Me and you have been talking about this for about a year and a half.
Yep.
I've never heard anyone talk about it. And when I tried to tell my, Bitcoin bro friends, they just kind of go, energy will never do that. We'll find a way to fix the energy crisis. We'll find a way to get energy cheap again. Oh, that won't happen to crypto. And I'm thinking, man, even if it does happen, like everything goes to zero in the crypto market. If this happens, everything in the crypto market will go to zero.
But on the other hand, if you hold a physical ounce of silver and your mining costs go to infinity, that just means that there's no more silver being mined and you've owned with zero energy inputs or anything. That everybody wants this because they want to make computers. They want to make cell phones. They want to make chips to make this Bitcoin, which then ultimately all the value is in your hand. The value, all of these things everything in life is more or less a derivative of energy. And what you want to do, at least in my opinion, as time progresses, if energy gets more expensive, you want to find what the value is in the world. What are people using? What's the highest, used commodities? Oil, silver, platinum, copper. You start looking at all these different things that we use in a variety of products. That's the value. That's the utility. People don't want Bitcoin. They want what Bitcoin can buy. Make sense? They don't want Bitcoin. They want what Bitcoin can buy. They want to be rich to transfer their Bitcoin into homes, into cars, into energy use, into whatever the heck it is. Expensive meals, expensive trips, and whatever, all energy consumption. I go buy a new I mean, this is what's weird. Everyone, the value of everything is a derivative of energy. And the thing that has the most utility and the most energy input, and you have it in your hand, I would think is the most valuable thing to own, which would ultimately be platinum, silver, these things with great utility to society, and some of these other things that we use in the world. Bitcoin's almost the exact opposite. It's an energy hog where the entire network is this gigantic energy consumer for the network to exist. And the value isn't in the coin because the network cannot exist without this massive energy input. So, which is growing at an exponential clip. That just doesn't make sense to me. And maybe I have this wrong. I mean, could we have this wrong where they can throttle back the energy input and just do transactions without something?
Right. And that's where people will argue about the proof of stake concept, which Ethereum is working. Or actually, I think they launched it like 2 months ago. And that helped pump the price of Ethereum because I think it was overall a success moving to that platform. But the thing is, right, that Bitcoin is still proof of work, and Bitcoin's the number one coin, and Bitcoin's the staple, right? So we'll see. I might need to just go do more research and catch up on proof of stake and understand it better. But you're never going to eliminate the input cost to zero. There's always going to be an energy cost to sustaining proof of stake through Ethereum. And more importantly, what I don't think is understood is you're going to, when you make things more efficient, the tail end of that technology is mass adoption to the point where now it's no longer efficient. And what I mean by that is when I think you've touched on this before too, but when the airplane was created for commercial transportation, everyone was like, oh my goodness, this is extremely efficient. We can transport someone from New York to California really quickly. Well, look at where we are today. It was so efficient. Now we have just tens of thousands of flights a day, burning so much energy that it's almost no longer efficient. It's still efficient in what it does, but its input costs have increased dramatically. And so if proof of stake actually proves to be have utility that can be used across the world, guess what? It's going to be used so much that now the energy costs are going to skyrocket, or the energy input, the input to sustain all of that utility is just going to skyrocket. So they're going to go back to where they are. Fast forward 10 years, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, we have an energy crisis with Ethereum. Now we need to create something else to fix it. And that's where the technocrats come in, because they go, when that happens, we'll fix it. Hey, we fixed it with proof of stake in 2022. So in 2032, we'll fix it with something else. Don't worry. And I'm sitting here going, every technology gets diminishing returns. Artificial intelligence has diminishing returns today compared to when it was, starting in the 80s or in the 70s. Everyone was just going crazy with artificial intelligence. That's why all those movies started coming out and all those science fiction novels, because everyone was seeing how quickly we are accelerating artificial intelligence technology, that they took that linearly and said, we will create robots that will take over the world in 10 years because of how fast we're doing this. But you get diminishing returns in technology everywhere. And the same thing will happen to cryptos. In 10 years, we're going to be like, we don't have anything. Like, this is a mature technology. We can't optimize this anymore. We're done.
Or we're very close to being done. It just kind of asymptotically approaches some.
I think a really good, I think the AI might be a bad example. I think a really good example would be land speed for a car, right? Mm-hmm. Like there was that, I don't know what decade was the battle, but every year someone's like beating someone else's record by 10 miles per hour. And now we're so fast that we've hit a bottleneck where they go, yeah, if you just go 5 miles per hour faster than where you're at now, you'll just blow up all your tires. And it's like, it'll take you 2 years to beat the record by 1 mile per hour. That's what I meant by diminishing returns in technology. And that will happen with cryptocurrencies too. And I think we're actually like on the other end of the S curve already when it comes to that technology.
Mm-hmm. What else am I missing, Andrew? What else do you think that people should know that I'm not talking about here?
Stay away from NFTs. Maybe we'll go into a lighthearted joke about it. So, like I said, I still have friends that are heavily involved. I have one friend who leveraged his entrepreneurship and his programming, his computer science skill to make himself extremely wealthy by creating his own NFT company. Good for him. I'm not going to take that away from him by any means. He found a demand, and even though it's a demand we think is dumb, he found that demand and created a product out of it, and people bought it. So good for him. However, me having friends in that community also left me with stories, not what they were doing. I have honest friends, but they did find what other people were doing with NFTs. Let me tell you what they did. So you take, let's say you take a picture of a rock and you create it into an NFT. And so I've got me, I've got you, and let's say we've got two other friends. Let's say it's John and also Steve. We're all in on it together. I sell you my rock for 5K. And then you sell it to John for 10K. John sells it to Steve for 20K. I buy it back for 25K. But we all use different wallets to do this. So no one
painting the table.
Yeah, exactly. And then some poor sucker comes in and goes, look at this thing pump. Oh my goodness. And then he buys it from me for 40K. We're out of the game and we sit back. And what's funny is it doesn't stop at 40K because you've already built that momentum. Some other guy buys it for 50, some other guy buys it for 100K, and then eventually hits 200K. And then that crash happens. And then everyone was like, why were we buying that thing again? I don't know. The guy's left with a 200K picture of a rock. This has happened, by the way. This is these are real stories.
Not even a picture, it's a JPEG.
A JPEG, yeah, a JPEG of a rock for 200K. And then everyone's scratching their head like, so how did we get here again? And then you research the transactions and you go, it's because people were trading it like crazy. So there was a craze and everyone thought that they would be the second to last person to buy it. You see what I'm saying? No one thought they would be the last person to buy it. They wanted to be the second to last person to buy it. And that's a real thing that happened. That I know people that were watching people do these things, and they've made articles about it too. And just stay away from NFTs. I think that is just hot garbage. I think I read a stat that said NFT volume, trading volume is down 99% in the last year.
Well, I remember Raoul Pal. He'd come on YouTube and just like, he's like, this is great. This is this. I'm like, this guy is like possessed by the largest FOMO I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, bad.
Like, because I mean, you got to peddle it. You got to like peddle it and sell it to everyone so they buy in and buy it. Because you need an increasing base, which is a Ponzi scheme, to make the pump keep going. Otherwise, it goes, it falls back over and creates that crash.
Like Melania Trump started an NFT. Isn't that a sell sign? Like a first lady starts an NFT.
For me, I never got into any of it. I just said, this is all
ridiculous.
I
know that, yeah.
Just keep me out. Yeah. You know that for sure. Because I've always been in the utility camp. Go get, silver. If you've got silver, it's basically the number 2 commodity. People are going to want it in the future, and it's going to be an industrial driven boom from shortages. So what else, Andrew? What else we got? Anything else?
I'll make a bold prediction.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, I'll make a bold prediction. So people, not to call out names, I just see him on interviews a lot. Gareth Soloway. I think he's smart on a lot of aspects, but he is a long-term bull on cryptos. Partly because I think he believes in the utility and the technology aspect of all that kind of stuff. The prediction I'll make is that if we do hit a energy crisis before the next crypto bull market, I think crypto would completely die and it will never recover.
Wow.
So let's just say 2 years. Let's just say if we hit an energy crisis in 2 years where energy costs are 5x what it is today, I would say an energy crisis would even be 3x of what it is today or 2x. Whatever value you want to put it on, right? Just say 3x. If we hit a point where, a gallon of gas is $15 and the cost to heat your home used to be $300 and now it's, $1,000. If we ever hit that environment or those market conditions, I think crypto will never, ever pump again, ever. I don't think it will go to zero. I think all volume would stop. All trading volume would stop, which means it doesn't go to zero. It just means that the price that it was last sold at is the price that it stays at, but you can't sell it. So it's just on bound paper, it says it's worth 20,000, but when you try to sell it, you get no buyers.
That's funny to think of.
And then this is what you do, right? You go, all right, I'll sell it for $0. Just get it off my computer. It doesn't work this way, right? You can just turn off, it doesn't work this way. But let's just say I want to sell this for $0. And then you go, okay, I'll take it for $0. And you go, okay, I'm going to transact you all my Bitcoin for $0. And they go, deal. And when you transact it, it goes, it will take $30,000 for you to make this transaction.
Oh my God, that's
They'd
awesome.
be like, you want to trade us 100 Bitcoin. It's going to cost 100 Bitcoin to transact, which is what would happen. Under proof of work, that's going to happen in a high, when all the miners go dead.
So here's something that I may predict. You're going to see a scramble for like Bitcoin and all these other cryptos to change that energy intensity to something that's way less and to something that's completely different. What's your thing?
Yeah, that's happened. Yeah, that's happening right now with Ethereum.
Yep.
And, maybe I'll spend the next month doing some light reading and studying up on it, and we can come back and converse again to see if and I'll back brief you and teach you how to work, and we'll probably pick holes in it and be like, oh, it doesn't work. This won't have sustain long term because of this. Won't sustain long term because of this. But yeah, that's the technocrat answer is, hey, we're already fixing it with proof of stake.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, the fundamentals of proof of stake is for you to hold on to your coins. That's why it's called staking. You basically, like, let's say you have 1,000 Ethereum. Fundamentally, the way it works is you say, I promise to put 100 into, it's almost like a CD out of a bank. You say, I will stake 100 coins and leave them into the network for the next 2 years. And while I'm doing that, the network pays me back 10% per year or something like that. But then again, all you're doing is you're incentivizing people not to transact. So then where's the utility?
Right.
So I'm spitballing. I'm not, don't hold me to this, right? I just know the fundamentals of proof of stake, and I would need to look back into it. But, I'll give you, all right, how about this? When they first started talking about proof of stake? It just came out this year. You want to predict?
No, I don't know. What's up?
It was like 2018. So
Okay.
it took about 4 years from concept to execution. And since we get diminishing returns in technology, the next time they think of a solution, it'll probably take 6 years to implement, or 8 years.
Well, proof of stake, wasn't that on that HBAR? Isn't that what they do?
Well, other coins do it too. Yeah, but
It's
the first Hedera
Hashgraph.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, what
HBAR.
happened? Well, so it's complicated, right? You have Ethereum that was proof of work. In order to transfer your proof of work model to proof of stake, it's going to take a long time to implement. However, when the proof of stake concept was already out there, you could just create your own coin with proof of stake. So it was easier to create a new coin with proof of stake than it would be to change Ethereum from proof of work to proof of stake. Because you would need to get all the nodes to agree, not all the nodes, a majority of the nodes to agree to switch their blockchain algorithms. Does that make sense? Did you know that? I guess.
Well, so it's
confusing.
not that I know or don't know. I think this is just one big bubble. That's what I think. I think it's all ridiculous. Like, I don't understand how things could work in a world which is basically what they did is they took inflation and then I'll just put it this way. All right. It's very easy to think of this conceptually. I've got a ball and it just doubles in size every single time. Double, 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 double. That is inflation. But the same thing can happen when you go in the opposite direction. You cut it in half, cut it in half, cut it in half, cut it in half, and you shrink. The inflation is the big portion where people will want to take out loans and pay it back with inflated currency. So people are incentivized to take loans. They're incentivized to expand the money supply. Mm-hmm. The opposite is true of all these cryptos. The cryptos are basically a fixed number of whatever, and you just cut it in half, cut it in half, cut it in half, and that is what the value is to the end users that are buying in at the late stages, because the early guys, they own everything, and everyone else is fighting for scraps of a fractional Bitcoin or a fraction of a coin. So they're like, oh, I'll buy $1,000 and it's, $60,000 a coin or whatever it was at the top. So they're getting these like smaller and smaller fractions as people adopt it later on, and all that value is being transferred to those that are of existing holders in that cryptocurrency. My question is, if there's no utility or no value to it from a transaction perspective, why would anyone transfer the value of the money that they're buying in these coins to the existing crypto coin holders? What incentive would I have to go buy it and transfer my wealth to them? That makes no sense to me. Now, if you look at it from a round trip perspective, if you go all the way back and say, okay, what do people want, right? So they want a currency that can transact value across whatever with zero fees, and hopefully it's private and anonymous. That is like the ideal thing for me. All right. So if you look at any of these cryptos, it's not anonymous. It's not, you've got a ledger that like tracks everything, which I see as bad, not necessarily good. It's great if you're running a company where you need to mark these transactions, but a country could come after me, I would think, if you've got a ledger that says Andy transacted this for this, he didn't pay tax, he didn't do this, let's shut him down, let's put him in jail. Like, I don't want that. I don't want a ledger. I don't want that stuff. So I'm not convinced that the actual design of what we have is beneficial to the end user for the maximum utility. I think something else could be designed where you don't want that. And you can disagree. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Why is it important to have the ledger? The ledger is basically saying that it's a way that you can see what transacted and when, but that could be a bad thing, couldn't it?
Yeah, you're making a great point. So I'll address the first point that I thought of while you were saying this about the ledger. The ledger grows every transaction, right?
Yes.
So if it grows infinitely, in order to sustain an infinite ledger, it would cost more energy.
Yeah, it's
the ledger itself, growing the ledger would grow the energy. So in itself, the technology itself is already making it worse. That's another point we didn't discuss, which is the ledger growth creates a bigger blockchain, which needs more energy. Now the ledger, I'm trying to remember the white paper I read a long time ago for all this stuff, for Bitcoin specifically. They wanted to create an honest trading platform, which is why they made it open source. However, it was behind your crypto wallet address, which is supposed to be anonymous. That was the whole idea of everything.
But you can't be anonymous if there's an address. And it's
right.
tied to.
I know, but that was the idea behind it, right? Because the people that made Bitcoin was like, hey, how do we make sure the government can't just print money and give it to banks and not tell anyone? And they're like, well, if we have a public ledger that's impossible, that everyone can download through the blockchain, then you can't do that anymore. And they're like, oh, good point. But we want everything to be private. We'll put some crazy, 64 character alphanumeric code behind everything. And they're like, okay, that's good enough. We'll go with that. But what they're finding is the moment, people are irresponsible. If you just get on their computer, you could probably find their address and then track every single one of their transactions.
Right.
There you go.
So it's even worse than anything else, because if you have cash, you can kind of wash things away, and people can't trace you, track you as easily, at least. I mean, they can see maybe that money was transacted out of a bank, but they don't know where it went. Mm-hmm. But like, if you've got Bitcoin or you got all these things, I mean, you have a ledger. I mean, it will infinitely store exactly what you've done your entire life, which then, if you've got a ledger, imagine how much money companies would pay to see exactly what you're buying, what you're doing, all of those things. It's basically one big database of it's a plethora of data that everyone's going to want to sell you crap. And that's really what it is. And they'll say, this person bought this, as long as well, my opinion is they can track it. They can stop it. They can shut down Coinbase. They can shut down exchanges. Yep. They can shut down all these things. I don't see how that's secure.
Exactly. So first I'll say, because I know someone's going to say this, they'll say, hey, Monero is completely private. I think there's one other one. It's not Hedera. I think there's another one that's similar. Monero was the big one in 2017, which is what I like the most, because it was completely private. It was really complicated. I didn't fully understand it, but they did find a way to make your wallet IDs anonymous. So like, you still had an honest ledger, but if you try to click on the wallet IDs, it just wouldn't populate. And somehow they made that work. Not too sure how. But to address the what was the second part you just asked?
Well, it's basically, I said, I don't know if I added it as a question. I was talking about the gigantic nature of all this data, and all they're going to do is sell it to advertisements.
Oh,
If you can
Coinbase,
see where all
Coinbase and all
these things,
that.
and Coinbase and,
Yeah.
and exchanges and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I got locked out of exchanges in 2017, 2018 when this was taken off. A lot of companies, that's when the IRS said you had
Finance.
to pay taxes on it. There was one called Polynex, and then you had Binance, where all these companies was like, we want to be honest with the US government and the EU, and so we need to follow their rules. And they said you need to produce your driver's license or your passports or your social security number and those kinds of things in order to continue using our website. And they go, if you don't do that, you have 30 days to get your coins out of our website. And so what do? You put your coins into your own private wallet. Well, you put it in your own private wallet, and then you're like, what do I do with this? I want cash. I want dollars to make these transactions. So you're like, okay, let me go to this website. And then this website says the same thing. You need to produce your driver's license and home address and social security number in order to use this. So then what ended up happening? The only way to get cash was to go through a company that was honoring the government.
Yep.
And it was tied to, guess what? So this is what you do. You would have your own wallet with its own ID. You would transfer those funds to, let's say, Coinbase. Coinbase would have that transaction. Therefore, they know your private wallet on your desktop.
Agreed.
So then the government can go, Coinbase, you need to provide us everything you know about Andrew. And they're like, all right, here you go. And then they find my wallet and they go, let's research this wallet on the mass database ledger. They have website. I mean, there's websites you can just put in a wallet ID and you can see every transaction it's made. And you'll be like, wait a second, this transaction over here is associated with somebody we know based off of intelligence gathering. That's, some drug ring guy out of South America. And they're like, let's keep looking into this Andrew guy. And now next thing you know, I'm an intelligence gathering point for who knows what. And now I got the eyes of the FBI on me for whatever reason, right? So they could do that. It's not private in that aspect. And if I look at Monero really quickly, like if I scroll down through CoinMarketCap and I look at all the top 50 coins, Monero is number 27. So clearly privacy is not a concern to people that are investing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right about that. You can definitely track it all.
It's not private though. And there's been many instances where people have donated, like crypto to truckers or whatever, and they were catching these people. So I'm like, how are they catching them? This is not private. There is no upside that I can find to use Bitcoin. The best thing I could do is get the heck out of it. That's all I can think of. I don't know. It's, everyone, it's like, you just don't understand. You haven't read the white papers. I'm like, I don't need to read the white papers. All I need is input, middle, the process, and the output. And if it doesn't do well at the things that I want it to do well in, well, why would I buy it? I'm not a speculator in the price of Bitcoin going up because I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I just don't know if these people have gone in and actually thought this through.
So you mentioned, yeah, they do. But you mentioned, look, I'm an honest guy. Okay, I'll tell you right now. Back when I was investing, I wanted money.
Yeah,
that's it. I wanted the utility to happen so I could sell.
Well, no, you wanted what Bitcoin. You wanted the Bitcoin price to go up, so you wanted the riches that it could buy at the end.
Yes.
You wanted the house. You wanted the car. You wanted the new technology, that the
phone,
the refrigerator, whatever the heck it is. Nobody wants Bitcoin. And if the utility of Bitcoin isn't there, if you were to take all the speculation of the price out and you said, would you use this in its current form or where it would be 2 years from now? Everyone would say, no, why the heck would you use that?
Right.
That's horrible. And I'm like, exactly. There's no use case. What keeps a commodity higher is its utility and use. If there's no utility and use, it goes through the floor. You don't even know it exists.
And you said that in your last video too. If you're in the desert, how valuable is water?
Infinite.
If you have an infection, how valuable is penicillin? If you have a Bitcoin, in what environment is there value in that other than maybe selling it to get cash?
I don't know. So I'm trying to figure out.
So if you have silver, there's value in creating for industrial use.
The tons of value, especially if energy
Gold,
gets
platinum.
scarce.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oil. How valuable is a gallon of oil? Think about it. Think about how much we overlook that.
Well, it's ridiculous.
Oh,
Think of it this way, and this is how I think of it, guys, if you really want to know, okay? Think of the amount of work that if you put a couple of gallons of gasoline or diesel in a truck or a bobcat, and it can dig all of these gigantic holes quicker than heck. Think about doing that by hand and the cost to do that by hand. I mean, think of how undervalued gas and oil is at like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, $80 a barrel. I mean, this is like free. So we basically established an entire industry, just industries of whatever it is, off of infinite sources of energy because it was so plentiful. But when that becomes opposite, when it becomes more scarce and people have to dig this stuff by hand, they're going to be like $500, $1,000 a barrel, $1,000 a barrel, $100,000 a barrel. Like when this gets scarce, you are going to see the real value come out. And I think that's what's going on. I think currencies can't survive that type of environment, those market conditions. And I think we could be entering something where energy gets repriced at a much higher level. And I think that's where some of these guys that are like, Putin and all these guys, they know what the value is. And they're like, we're not going to accept your currencies anymore. Like, this is just garbage. But it's going to happen even to Bitcoin and these other ones because they're energy hogs. And the value is in the thing that you can own that everybody wants, which is the silver, which is the computer, which is the car, which is the thing that has embedded energy that everybody wants in the end. If we get into that scenario where energy is that scarce, that's a ways away. I'm not saying it's tomorrow. So I just wanted to talk about this because I'm hearing a lot. It's coming back with the Bitcoin. Like, I just don't understand, what people tell you. You just don't understand. You haven't read the white paper. It's like, well, maybe I'm 15 steps ahead of these people. Maybe they're so far back that they don't even understand the basic concepts that we were discussing, which I wanted to discuss so they understand. Because the white paper is irrelevant. When we look at designs and we look at things, it's what we want to do as an engineer is this is the whole thing about any product that you make. It's this simple. You've got your inputs coming in and you want to minimize your inputs. You've got your design and your processes that make a product. And then you want to do that as efficiently as possible using the least amount of energy and minerals. You pump it through a facility with the least amount, and then you get a product which is hopefully really good that people can use in the end. All it is one big conversion of energy and minerals to a usable product. And we want to do that in the least amount of energy and minerals to process it and go and put it through with a particular design that works for the end user. If you were to take that model and you were to apply it to Bitcoin, how does it fare? We use copious amounts of crap, run it through a whole bunch of crap, and do all this proof of work with all this computational garbage, and then you output something that has no value to the end user. And I'm like, this is garbage. Like, do you know how easy it would be for some engineer to come in here and just be like, rip this whole thing down and just blow it right through? When you have gold or silver, you've got something that everybody wants. It's used in products. It's a number 2 commodity. It's used everywhere. Everybody wants this thing from an industry standpoint, from a financial standpoint. And you know what? Guess how much energy it is for me to hand it to Andrew over here when I go see him? 0 energy. Just hand it to him. Whatever energy that took. Bitcoin is not digital gold. Bitcoin is digital waste that just it basically converts polysilicon and all the parts of computers and makes them waste over time as they run through them from all their computing power and blow through a bunch of energy and convert all of our natural resources to heat and produces nothing of value. And I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how I'm seeing this. And am I seeing this wrong? I mean, what am I missing here, Andrew? Like,
well, I was just thinking, right, that the example you give, like if I were to be the devil's advocate of input, processes, output.
Yep.
The only way to make Bitcoin work or crypto work in that framework is for me to tell you that framework is wrong and then try to argue against the framework.
Yeah, if you
Bitcoin
want to
doesn't,
counter argue.
Bitcoin can't fit in there. It just can't. There's no way. I was thinking about that while you were discussing, and I was thinking like, how does Bitcoin fit in that framework? It really doesn't. It's a funny point you made. You have inputs, which is energy intensive. The process is solving algorithms that doesn't benefit anybody, and then the output is you get a digital coin,
Yes.
where the only way to trade it is to go back to the input line.
Yes. It's so dumb. Hopefully you're getting it, because that's how easy. My whole job.
No one says this. It's funny, isn't it?
Well, my whole job, everything I do is to use the least amount of everything. Use less energy, use less water, use less minerals, use less equipment. It's like you want less time, less humans, less resources. That's all I'm here to do as my entire job, is to use less of everything. And then we come in with this Bitcoin in a design that asymptotically approaches infinity of computing power and energy. I'm like, this is the complete stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's exactly opposite of human progression. It's going backwards from that perspective.
And the ledger infinitely grows too, which we just discussed.
Which then means that you have an infinite amount of transactions to go back and look at.
Which is an infinite amount of transactions you have to track and maintain and sustain in the network.
Which goes back to the point, why would you want a ledger? I'm back to confusion. It's not me being confused. I'm challenging the design of the system, saying the system sucks because of the design. That is where I'm challenging. And you know, I challenge this at work. There's people that talk about the tolerances and everything. I look at process capability. I look at how tight the tolerances are. You've got CP, CPK. CPK is how you're measured on it. CP is the process capability of how the width of your capability versus the tolerance. A tolerance is a man-made thing that we just make up. All right. And then we have to meet that. It's the design of the system that has to meet what the wants and needs of the consumer within the resource constraints of the world. Why would anyone adopt this in mass if it's basically going to blow up the entire system in terms of energy because of the computational power that's needed and then the value that it brings on the back end? We have ledgers. You can go and have a ledger and a bill of sale and whatever you need in today's markets. I don't see why that is so valuable. Then, well, it's the fraud, it's this, it's that. Well, the question is, well, if everything doesn't have to be tracked, well, then why track it? You want to track the minimal amount of things that are important to track. So then you're back to a use case and a centralized database to track things. You don't need it to be decentralized. And I don't even know if you need a Bitcoin, if you would need a blockchain, as long as you believe in the system that it works. So I don't know. I'm going off kind of the deep end. I'm just saying, like, way over here on the deep end. I just don't know why the design is so great. I think it's a horrible design.
Well, it seems like every benefit of the original intent of cryptocurrency or the original intent of Bitcoin, when you scale it to infinity, that ends up being its downfall too. The ledger is an example, because now I was just thinking this too when you mentioned it, and it's okay. Well, how come banks don't have the same ledger problem? They definitely track transactions going back decades ago, and then it hit me.
Track what's needed.
Not just that, but only the bank tracks it. You make a transaction, you don't have to support that you don't support the network by also downloading all those transactions. But in Bitcoin, every node supports the transaction. So when I download my Bitcoin wallet and I act as a node, I therefore have the ledger on my computer. So when you do it, you're going to get the ledger. When everyone else in the world does it, they all get the ledger. Only the bank needs the ledger. So that's also, but that's the benefit of it. But that's the benefit of Bitcoin. It's that everyone has to have it. The banks can't fudge the ledger with Bitcoin because the ledger is public to everybody. However, that's also the downfall, because now everyone needs to have the ledger. It's extremely energy sensitive.
Right, but you don't need a ledger if the thing that you own is a legit thing to own. Like gold doesn't need a ledger if you actually own a real piece of gold. You can tell if something's fake or real, or silver or whatever, because you can measure it. So what you want to do is you want something, whatever you transact in, to be the real thing.
Right.
You want it to be scarce or whatever, but you want it to do it in a way that the design puts a minimal amount of strain on the resource and environment that we have. We've got a system that is a massive, environmental hog, so to speak, and strains the environment. I don't know. That's my take on it. We don't have to go too deep into it, but it's like, I just don't understand why everybody's so pro this thing.
It's I don't want to make fun of anyone, but I think you were right. It's I don't want to say it's smarts, but they're not looking. They're greed. They're wearing greedy glasses, and so when they read these white papers, they're reading it through glasses of greed, and they go, "That's money. Let me invest." As opposed to looking at it, going, "What if there's a fault in this system? What if the energy crisis happens? What if we scale this to infinity? What if we scale the utility by 100? What's going to happen to the system? Stress test it."
Yep.
There you go.
Maybe I figured this out way before everyone else. I don't know.
Not before me.
Well, I was back in the day. I was just like asking these questions back and forth. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't know why.
To leave on a positive note, I 3x'd my position in crypto, so I'm still happy about that. But I could have 10x'd. If I sold in 2018, I could have 10x.
Well, here's another thing that people always say that confuses me. I know we're still on this, but they say that Bitcoin is an asset. They like undeniably like Bitcoin's an asset. We should use this as an asset. And I'm going like, how is this thing an asset? Like, what do you own that makes this thing so great? A house protects you from weather. It protects you from the cold. It has that intrinsic value. But like, Bitcoin has what makes it so valuable? What's the asset? And then you've got this whole problem with what we just described, this whole clip here. So it's I don't know.
It's fundamentally the difference between value and cost. They don't get it. That's it. Oh, this costs $60,000, therefore it should have a value of $60,000. No, not true. Oh, a gallon of gas has a cost of $4 a gallon, therefore it has a value of $4 a gallon. Not true. And you just went into why that's not true. I mean, what would the true value of a gallon of gas be? If your car can take you 30 miles inside of a nice AC or heated vehicle, and you can tow stuff inside for 30 miles in what? Like half an hour?
Minutes.
Half an hour, yeah. And it costs $3 today to do that?
Yeah, that's nothing.
That's the cost. But the value is probably like thousands of dollars to do that. Comparing it to 200 years ago?
Yeah.
Whoa. So that's what it is. I think people don't understand the difference between cost and value, which could be a video of itself, just going through what the highest value things are and comparing them to their costs. And you're going, dang, maybe I should be investing in water, oil, shelter, food.
Back to where I'm at then.
Start a homestead.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
But that's all I've got. I don't have anything else. I really wanted to tackle that Bitcoin thing.
It's fun to talk about, but I think we're on our own little island right now, but we'll see who's right. We'll give
Michael
it 5 years.
Saylor, he's over on I don't know, like what would that be? We'll call it Crack Island or White Powder Island. He's putting it up the nose too much or something. I don't know.
What's his name?
Michael Saylor.
Yeah, YouTube guy.
No, he's a pro Bitcoin guy. He's like total big. Michael Saylor.
Oh, Saylor. This is how it's spelled. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, and he's been on the Lex Friedman podcast. Okay, makes sense.
He's on all that stuff.
Yeah, Bitcoin Fleet.
Yeah, and Max Kaiser and all those guys.
Yeah, he's been on London Real. Wow, he's been on some big name podcasts.
Oh yeah.
Hey, if you want proof of that, just be like if you want proof that it's hit its peak, just ask yourself. Go to Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, London Real, Valuetainment. Are those big podcasts? Are they interviewing cryptocurrency people, or are they interviewing energy crisis people? And I think
eventually they'll hit energy crisis.
Oh, they will. Yeah, and then
they'll get some now.
And that's when we're going to hit peak energy crisis, is when everyone that's being interviewed is working at a uranium plant or working in oil discovery and production.
Yep. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, that's all I've got, Andrew. I really appreciate you coming on, onto the channel and the website, or I should say the
Yeah,
channel,
definitely.
not the website, channel. And maybe we can come back and hit something else up, go in depth.
Yeah, it's always fun
And,
talking to you.
talk about other stuff.
Will do.
So if you guys want to follow Andrew, he's on Twitter at the silver_Amir. Is that what it is?
That's right. Yep. I don't post
I know,
almost
at
ever.
all.
'Cause, yeah, I'm more busy reading and learning than I am trying to teach other people, because
Right.
that's the stage I am in life right now, right? I'm learning, I'm not teaching, but sometimes I'll post in the Discord, the Finding Value Finance Discord, with the same handle, Silver Amir.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen you on there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. That's all I've got for today. Thanks, Andrew, for coming on, and we'll catch everybody another time. So see you, everybody.